Welcome to Thoughts I'm Still Having, the podcast where we overthink pretty much everything until we either find an answer or completely exhaust the idea. I'm Olivia Britton, your host, and today I want to explore the thoughts that I'm still having about... Well, hello everyone, and happy spring. I'm officially declaring that we're not going to have any more cold fronts, and spring weather starts now, and it's going to stay consistent. But in the state of Alabama, is that actually true? We don't know. Welcome to Thoughts I'm Still Having. I'm Olivia Britton, your host, and I am joining you after 2 weeks of radio silence. I know, I'm so sorry. I didn't give you any updates, but I was actually on spring break. This spring break, I had the opportunity to go and serve on a mission trip in Guatemala. This is my third year going. It was such an amazing time, just fully putting all distractions aside, focusing on the Lord and how I can serve Him and love His people. So for me, I'm coming off of that spring break high. I'm also exhausted though, so bear with me if I start to ramble a little bit. The simple life is a great topic to cover as we all enter into spring cleaning season. You may be spring cleaning as you're listening to this podcast, and hey, I think that is a great use of time. Put in your headphones, put on this podcast, and go through that box from 8th grade, okay? Regardless of the fact that you've kept everything for the past 4 years still, I think you should go through it again. All right, all jokes aside, I'm hyped for today's episode. The simple life is a lot less simpler than we imagine, and you know I'm going to overthink it until we're all exhausted. Here we go. Welcome to Thoughts I'm Still Having. If you're not on social media or you just haven't seen this idea of the simple life, let me break it down for you. It's basically this desire of people online to go back to a time when life was just simpler, or it at least appeared to be. We see people approaching this as going out and starting a farm, or maybe consuming less fast fashion, kind of things that are a little bit more simpler because they're more old-fashioned. When I started researching this and overthinking this topic of the simple life, I realized that many people online see the simple life as one without technology. And I think for a lot of Generation Z, we've grown up being told that technology ruined us. Many people, especially those of the older generation, believe that technology is the reason that Gen Z is fighting more mental health issues. They tend to lack physical skills and hobbies. They even think that technology is the reason Gen Z, as a generation, tends to lack morals and values. Now look, I am not saying that technology isn't attributing to all of those things. All I'm saying is that if we were focusing on the definition of simple, wouldn't technology have made life simpler? Do you see where I'm going here? This is going to be a long spiral, so buckle up. Simple, right? We're talking about the simple life. Simple is defined as easily understood or done, presenting no difficulty. So when you look at the simple life with the definition of simple, technology definitely made life more simpler. Some simple ways that technology has made life easier and less difficult would be access to information. Within seconds, you can Google any question you have and find an answer or an article that explains it. Managing your time is easier with a digital calendar. You don't have to constantly remember things when you have a computer in your pocket that's going to remind you when you have a meeting or an appointment. Not to mention how much easier communication has become. Within seconds, you can text, call, or email anyone all across the world. So while technology has definitely attributed to the mental health issues and maybe even the lacking of physical skills, morals, and values, technology has not ruined the simple life. It's honestly probably one of the biggest contributors we've ever had to a more simple life. Okay, so here's the big question. Here is the thing that I want you to dwell on as we dive through different aspects of today's episode. Why do we long for the simple life when technically everything is much simpler now? Have we found ourselves in a state of mind where we long for something that is theoretically harder but more rewarding? So we crave a sort of physical accomplishment that today's standards can't offer us. Both of these questions that I've grouped together are very subjective. So keep that in mind, that your answer is going to be completely different than mine and completely different than your neighbor's. Personally, I think that these questions are what have caused us to seek a sort of regression as an answer for overstimulation. And look, I'll admit, when I go through seasons of constant busyness, especially busyness with things that are so modern, I always wonder what life would be like if I was born 100 years earlier. Would it be easier? Especially as a believer, I often envy the Bible characters that I read about, thinking that while their lives were physically harder than mine by a landslide, okay, Noah built an ark here, I'm jealous of their simple-mindedness and blissful ignorance, you know? If you're sitting there nodding your head going, yeah, me too. I envy those that lived in the biblical times and their blissful ignorance. I'm sorry in advance because I'm about to tell you something that's going to completely shift your mindset. I think that this is where we catch ourselves assuming that people of the past were less intelligent than we are. We assume that, their lives were simpler, so their brain capacity must have been less. But this isn't true. And you guys aren't going to believe who has developed a concept on this very idea. Do you want a drum roll? C.S. Lewis. He defines it as chronological snobbery. Chronological snobbery is a term coined by C.S. Lewis to describe the assumption that newer ideas are automatically better than old ones, and that people of the past were less intelligent simply because they lived earlier. Lewis warned against this mindset because it can make us dismiss valuable wisdom just because it's old. Here's one of the most well-known explanations that he said. Chronological snobbery is the uncritical acceptance of intellectual climate common to our own age, and the assumption that whatever has gone out of date is on that account discredited. In simpler terms, it means that blindly trusting modern thinking while unfairly rejecting older ideas without evaluating either one. So instead of assuming that new is better, Lewis encourages looking at ideas from all time periods with humility and critical thinking skills, which again is one of those things that we can find ourselves doing without even realizing it. I've definitely done it, especially when I look back on like the cavemen times. I just assumed that they were dumber. And this is highly because of the way that modern cartoons and different things portray them. I mean, look at movies like the Croods. Okay, stay with me because this is such a good example. If you've never seen the movie, it's basically about a cave family, if that's the right term, that lived during what they thought was the end of the world. They go through this challenge of never wanting to leave their cave, but having to because, well, the world's ending. So they must find this new world. And look, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but what would this podcast be if not overthinking everything, right? Each one of the family members in the Croods represents the way that we all tend to see cavemen, with hyper-awareness and more of an uncivilized, animal-like instinct. But we see the oldest daughter of the family, Eat is her name, of course, and of course it's the oldest daughter. Let me just go on a rant for a minute. Of course it's the oldest daughter that's changing the narrative for her family. As an oldest daughter, I relate to the overbearing pressure that she feels in this movie. But I really enjoyed my thoughts on this movie, especially when I connected it to the ideology of chronological snobbery. But let's stay focused here. Eep, yes, that's her name because it's still a children's movie, okay? Eep is fascinated by light, by fire, and by what's beyond what she's always known, which, if we're being honest, feels very on brand for how we imagine cavemen. We imagine them to be curious, a little chaotic, but always just discovering things. But here's where it gets interesting, okay? Eep isn't dumb. She's not behind. She's not less evolved in the way that we casually assume people from the past were. If anything, she's the most open-minded character in this whole movie. She's willing to question what she's been taught, to step outside of fear, and to imagine something better. And that's where this idea of chronological snobbery kind of falls apart. Because if someone like Eep existed in the past, then what does that say about our assumption that people back then were automatically less intelligent, less thoughtful, less capable of what we are now, when realistically they weren't? People of the past were just working with different information, because obviously Eep didn't grow up with schools, books, or the internet. Her education looks completely different than ours, but that doesn't mean that her brain is any less capable. It just means that she hasn't been given the same information. And I think that's where we get it twisted. We look back at people in the past and we assume that they were less intelligent, when really they were just working with what they had. Different tools, different knowledge, and a different understanding of the world. But their capacity to think, to question, to imagine something beyond what's in front of them, that's still there. We see it in Eep when she risks everything to explore something new. Her curiosity and her willingness to challenge everything she's been taught, that's not a modern trait. That's a mere human trait. Okay, I hope that's clicking to you. And that's enough of overanalyzing Disney movies. But trust me, I do think that we could make a whole episode about that topic and that movie alone. Okay, so now we're sitting here and we're thinking, life wasn't simpler, the people weren't dumber, so why do we envision the simple life as something of the past? This question required me to go one of my least favorite places. You're not going to believe it. TikTok. And what I found is this idea that the simple life isn't stressful. When I looked up living the simple life on TikTok, a ton of these de-influencing videos popped up, basically encouraging people to use more less trendy things and drive them away from overconsumerism. It's this idea of not purchasing every new item as soon as it comes out. So in that way, it's making life less cluttered, which is probably simpler, but then I think that it creates this vicious cycle of trying to be trendy by not keeping up with the trends, if that makes sense. So then people try and find new ways of being different because not being trendy isn't cool anymore. So they become trendy. And then it just creates this ongoing trendy, not trendy cycle. Do you see where I'm going with this? So basically, here's what it all boils down to. I usually never have an answer for these kind of things, but today I think we might have just finally reached a conclusion. A simple life. The simple life is one free of comparison. Free of worrying about what Sally Joe has or keeping up with the Joneses. The simple life is where you are not only satisfied with what you have, but you're not worried of what other people are doing. Theodore Roosevelt famously said, comparison is the thief of joy. And this is where our society's longing for the simple life started, on a search for joy. Well, if you wanted to find something, shouldn't you see who stole it? All of these people we see online living the simple life may be fully satisfied with bricking their phones and drinking raw milk, but comparing their skewed version of simple to our own desire for a more enjoyable life is not going to help you reach it. The simple life is not physical. The simple life is completely mental. It's all in your head. Is it easier? Is it more enjoyable? That is what makes your life simpler. And I don't know a lot, but I know that if you're constantly looking at other people and trying to be them, you're not going to enjoy yourself. You're not going to enjoy who you were created to be. So if I have one word of advice for you, if you don't hear anything of this whole podcast, listen to this line. Don't compare. You want a simple life? Stop comparing your life to others. This can be hard though, because we tend to lean on emotion whenever we're comparing our lives to other people's. And emotion's hard because you never know when it's going to come out or how it's going to come out. I think for a lot of us, our desire for a more joyful emotion will fester in a vengeful idea of comparison, and we end up hurting ourselves when all we wanted to do was be more joyful. And when something is rooted in emotion, it's unpredictable. You never know how, when, or why it's going to come out. All you know is that when it does, you better be ready and have some tissues. On my next episode, we're going to be diving into that topic a little bit deeper. It's going to be emotion versus logic, and when we use certain parts of our brains to make sense of different things that happen to us. I hope this episode left you longing for more in your own life, not in questions. I hope that you're looking at your life thinking, oh, parts of my life could definitely be more simpler if I stop comparing them to other people. Because the only one that knows how to make your life simpler is you. But for now, thanks for taking a simple idea and overthinking it with me. Until next time, this is Olivia Britton with Thoughts I'm Still Having. That pretty much sums up my thoughts on that. Thank you so much for listening to the Thoughts I'm Still Having podcast. And hey, don't overthink it. Just go ahead and subscribe on anywhere that you get your podcast. You can stay connected with me on all social media platforms at Olivia Britton _. Check out my website that's linked in the description of this episode. And I'll talk to you next time right here on Thoughts I'm Still Having.